So this is What If Deku was Lion-O, Part 1. Now, it's not many, what was it, Thundercat videos, or I guess, what ifs, because Thundercat isn't really that popular now, or back then, because I never really saw anybody really go overboard about Thundercats, because Thundercats wasn't really that big. It was more or less kind of just a TV show, like He-Man, but He-Man was a lot more better written, I guess. But basically, this was a what if I wanted to do real quick, and also it was just me tweaking around with different, pretty much pictures and making a thumbnail that I really liked. So I guess I'm just gonna make this video real quick. Now, basically, before I get into the video, I'm going to be grinding the next week. Next week, after spring break, because this is the last 2 days, my last days of spring break. Basically, after this, I'm gonna be grinding my action figure stuff. I said it a lot of times. I've never done it. I've only done it for like a couple days, but I'm gonna be starting to grind on it. I'm gonna start making a lot more stop motions, a lot more videos, and a lot more action figure compared stuff. Maybe even reviews. So it's basically gonna be a combination of a lot more different stuff on my YouTube channel, like what ifs, maybe some anime or movie reviews. Also, it's going to be some stop motions, obviously, action figure reviews, maybe, and also collection or toy hunts, and maybe some vlogs, maybe. Now, let's just get into the video. Start our story off with Deku's origin, or Deku's, upbringing, how he would come into this world. Now, basically, let's go over the origins of the Thundercats real quick. Now, basically, Lion-O in, the original show, he was basically born, he was born on the planet, I think, Third Earth. Basically, Deku be from Third Earth. Third Earth is basically, in this universe, is going to be a planet way outside the Milky Way galaxy, in a pretty much a solar system that is able to contain or pretty much, give life to species on that planet. So this is What If Deku was Lion-O, Part 1. Now, it's not many, what was it, Thundercat videos, or I guess, what ifs, because Thundercat isn't really that popular now, or back then, because I never really saw anybody really go overboard about Thundercats, because Thundercats wasn't really that big. It was more or less kind of just a TV show, like He-Man, but He-Man was a lot more better written, I guess. But basically, this was a what if I wanted to do real quick, and also it was just me tweaking around with different, pretty much pictures and making a thumbnail that I really liked. So I guess I'm just gonna make this video real quick. Now, basically, before I get into the video, I'm going to be grinding the next week. Next week, after spring break, because this is the last 2 days, my last days of spring break. Basically, after this, I'm gonna be grinding my action figure stuff. I said it a lot of times. I've never done it. I've only done it for like a couple days, but I'm gonna be starting to grind on it. I'm gonna start making a lot more stop motions, a lot more videos, and a lot more action figure compared stuff. Maybe even reviews. So it's basically gonna be a combination of a lot more different stuff on my YouTube channel, like what ifs, maybe some anime or movie reviews. Also, it's going to be some stop motions, obviously, action figure reviews, maybe, and also collection or toy hunts, and maybe some vlogs, maybe. Now, let's just get into the video. Start our story off with Deku's origin, or Deku's, upbringing, how he would come into this world. Now, basically, let's go over the origins of the Thundercats real quick. Now, basically, Lion-O in, the original show, he was basically born, he was born on the planet, I think, Third Earth. Basically, Deku be from Third Earth. Third Earth is basically, in this universe, is going to be a planet way outside the Milky Way galaxy, in a pretty much a solar system that is able to contain life. Basically, what will happen is pretty much on this different, solar system. Pretty much what will be happening is the mutants, or this universe's lizards or mutants, or pretty much the aliens that would go against Caldera. I think that's what what was it? the place on Third Earth is called, where the Thundercats are from. Basically, Caldera is pinned under pretty much distress and also is attacked. And basically, pretty much the king sends his son down to another planet. But in this universe, pretty much, well, Deku would be a child, kind of like a Kryptonian type vibes. He would be about, let's say, 1 year old. Basically, pretty much what would happen is the king would have sent him down there to planet Earth with also somebody to protect him and to keep him safe. Tigro. Tigro would have also been, well, Deku's brother. He would be about 2 years older than him, about let's say 2 years old, and pretty much what would happen is, well, Tigro, for a very young child who would actually be able to fight. For some reason, their anatomy would be a little bit different in this universe. And basically, he would look about in human years about 5 years old, Tigra, but in this universe, they would age a little bit slower. So basically, what happened is, well, Deku and Tigra, both brothers, would be sent to planet Earth to pretty much, well, keep the bloodline correct, and they will be sent to Earth, first Earth, pretty much the planet where it's the safest environment for Tigro and also Deku, or aka Lion. The best place for Deku, or aka Lion, to pretty much well, grow up and become safe. Basically what would happen is, after this, Deku and Tigro, or Tigris, I don't really remember his name, Tiger something. Basically, they will be sent to Earth, basically through a pod. A similar ship as in canon. As they would be sent to the pod, they'll be sent to planet Earth, about 2 miles away from a get-together party with the Inko family and also the Katsuki family. Basically, them having a very nice day. Basically, them being a lot more closer before Deku or Bakugo was born. Basically, what would happen is Deku and Bakugo wouldn't be born because Katsuki Bakugo, or I guess Katsuki Bakugo, or Bakugo's a canon mother, and also Inko wouldn't be able to have children in this canon. Basically, them being, for some reason, not being able to have children. Now, basically, the fathers, and most of them would be, looking up for adoption or a different way to, have a child. But basically, what happened is pretty much doing this. We get switched to pretty much the planet of Caldera, or Third Earth, being destroyed as they leave their home planet. Tiger and Deku would have arrived on Earth 2 miles away from the get-together party with the Katsuki and Deku family, or Inko family. As Deku would wake up from his slumber in the pod that he crashed, Tiger would have been separated from the pod about 2 miles away. What would happen is the family would have seen this, and pretty much the two men in the family, Bakugo's canon father and also Asashi, would have gone to check it out. Them going in different directions. Asashi would be going in the same direction where Deku would be landed on, or Deku would land, and we would see pretty much Bakugo's father walk over to the area where Tiger was born, or Tigra landed. Now basically, pretty much Asashi would have came across the pod and basically would have seen Deku in it. As he would be very confused, he would find some sort of connection between them. Basically, him opening the pod and cuddling the 1-year-old baby. Now, basically, what happened is Inko would have also came very shortly, seeing the baby, and they would have said that it was some sort of blessing from the gods. Basically, them praying for a child. Now, basically, over a lot more conversation after Katsuki Bakugo, or pretty much Bakugo's father, would find Tigro, they would come to the conclusion to keep this a secret and adopt the children. They would put them in the system, and they would have not found where they came from. They weren't from America, Canada, or anywhere else on planet Earth. And basically, putting out missing posters. Now, what would happen over this, about, let's say, a year later, both of them will be adopted by different families. Tiger would have been adopted by the Bakugo family, since he would be about 2 years old. And pretty much, Deku would have been adopted by the Inko family. Now, we switch a couple years later, time gaps, and Tigro and Lionel basically are pretty much, well, Tigro and also Deku basically, well, have been raised together. Now, basically, they've been raised by different families, but they've been raised near each other, going to the same school, and multiple other stuff. Since Deku would be born a Thundercat, he wouldn't really be classified quirkless, since he would look like a quirk person, since he would have animal, well, characteristics. With red hair, Deku would still have red hair, but he would have what was it? Green streaks of hair out through his, what was it? Red hair. Basically, what would happen is pretty much Deku would have, well, just lived on planet Earth. Him not knowing much about their culture, but their pod would have held some of the secrets of their planet, including some of the very big secrets of omens. Now, basically, what happened is Deku would have been raised just like any other normal court person on planet Earth, being told the language of Earthlings and multiple other stuff. Now, basically, what happened over time and over the years, Deku would have started to manifest his, well, pretty much Thundercat abilities in short moments, like climbing on the walls or jumping and landing on his feet after falling down the stairs, or pretty much just falling down a balcony in the house. And basically, what would happen over time, Inko and Asashi, since Asashi would have an overseas job, he would still go overseas, but he would find more time to get to his family in this canon. Now, what would happen is pretty much Deku would have used most of his years training his body and being or wanting to become the number one hero. Now, basically, let's go over the abilities of Thundercats, or just the main abilities or base powers of Thundercats and their species. Now, basically, just humanoid cat abilities. A bit simple, just humanoid cat abilities. Now, basically, if you're wondering what you mean, basically, Thundercats are basically just, I guess, werewolves, you could say, or werecats. I don't really understand, but basically, very simple. They have humanoid cat abilities like super senses, but the same senses as, well, a cat. Basically, them having the same senses of a cat. Also, them having whiskers to detect pretty much shifts in wind and also around their surroundings. So basically, Deku, it's nearly impossible for Deku to be tricked or for him to get blindsided before, he can get hit. Basically, it's simple. Deku can't get, well, blindsided unless he's too slow to dodge the attack. And basically, what happened during this time, pretty much Deku would have used most of his time, resources, and some of the money his parents give him to buy equipment, renowned places, and just train. A bit simple. Him just trying to become the best he could possibly, and become a number one hero or become the next All Might. And basically, Deku would have had superhuman agility, strength, speed, reflexes, and pretty much claws as well. Him having claws, kind of like, I guess, tiger claws or lion claws. Him being able to cut through human flesh very quickly, like butter. Him also having razor sharp teeth or canine teeth. And basically, him also being able to have extreme agility. Him being able to dodge bullets and a bunch of other stuff. Him having a reaction time that's insane. And basically, his reaction time wouldn't be faster than, light itself, but it would be fast enough to nearly dodge bullets. Now, basically, also, Deku would also have a couple other extra abilities. Now, he would have the abilities that the sort of omens would give him, but we're going to get into that later on. Now, basically, what happened is pretty much, well, Deku with his abilities that he's gotten while he was born, mainly because he's a Thundercat. Pretty much, Tiger would have had the same abilities as well. Basically, what would happen with their DNA, for some reason in this universe or on this planet, the Thundercat DNA is very much malleable when they're first born. So if they're raised on a different planet, their DNA may be changed a little bit. Now, Deku's DNA wasn't changed too much since his DNA is more pure. But basically, Tygro's DNA, or this universe, is Bakugo. Tygo and Bakugo are going to be the same since they are going to be raised by the same people. And basically, what happened is pretty much, well, Tigro, or I'm going to narrate him as Bakugo or Tigro, just for, future's sake. Basically, Bakugo would have had, well, explosion abilities as well. And basically, his abilities would come in the same way as Deku's, him having all the normal Thundercat abilities like super agility, strength, reaction time, and a bunch of other stuff. And basically, the other thing, they would also have superhuman durability as well, so they could take a beating. And basically, what happened is pretty much what would happen is Tigro or Bakugo would have trained himself, kind of like Deku as well. Them training each other and basically becoming more brotherly over the years. Not the, throne or anything like that getting in the way of their friendship. Now, basically, over the years, Tigro would have started to get some memories from planet, or pretty much by planet Caldera, or from their home planet. Him having memories of his father talking to him, him having memories of the kingdom and all sorts of other stuff, but fading away very quickly. Now, basically, what would happen over time, he would go to his pod, or the pod they landed or came to Earth by, because they wouldn't be lied to, and pretty much Tigro and Deku would have been told about, the plan, the pod. Now, basically, the pods would have been in a station room, or I guess kept in the couple's or the family's garage or attic, basically keeping them safe and not really talking about them much. Not really looking at them, not really looking into them at all, actually, because they were just there to raise the children and to have a child. Basically, what happened is Inko would have treated Deku the same, including, Tigro as well. And basically, what happened is pretty much Bakugo would have, used most of his time to try to figure out where they came from. Him looking at different, catalogs on humans trying to travel to other planets, and eventually them finding, or one news article in a couple of years before, or about 2 years after Bakugo and Deku would be adopted by the Katsuki and Inko family. Pretty much what would happen, they'll be told that they come across a shattered planet that looked like it could inhabit Earth, because it would be a planet about three three rows down from a sun that's able to give life to certain creatures and also obtain life. Basically saying that this planet in theory could have housed well a species, and it's no real way or real reason why it would blow up. Now, basically, them saying that it may have been aliens out there, but now they're probably not here anymore. Pretty much the news article saying that. And basically, what happened is Tigro would have looked more into his, pod about when he was about 15, since he would be about 16. Deku would be about, what was it? Tigro would be about 16, 17, and Deku would be about 15. And basically, what happened, both of them would make their way down to pretty much, well, their school on the first day of school. Now, their school life would be similar, the same. Pretty much Deku not being bullied, since he wouldn't be quirkless, or he would, but still, he wouldn't be quirkless, and a bunch of other stuff. Now, if you're probably wondering about the whole entire DNA malleable thing I mentioned earlier, with pretty much Tigro or Bakugo having the explosion quirk, even though they're Thundercats, pretty much he would be able to, adapt and actually, pretty much make his own quirk with his DNA. Since his DNA would pretty much come across Katsuki and pretty much Katsuki Bakugo, and also, what was it? No, Katsuki Bakugo Katsuki, no, Katsuki Bakugo, and also pretty much Bakugo's father. Pretty much their DNA would also rub on top of pretty much Katsuki, or Deku, Bakugo, since Bakugo would also, or all the time, be treated and also pretty much be babied until he was about 17, or I think 16. Now, basically, what happened is pretty much the DNA constantly being rubbed off of his body basically would have eventually merged with his cells from a young age, them being a lot more malleable. Now, basically, what happened is he would be able to adapt, or pretty much, I guess, create his own quirk. His quirk being very similar to Bakugo's quirk, but a lot more weaker. Basically, being able to set off small explosions like fireworks or grenade explosions, but anything more than that is impossible. So basically, what would happen is pretty much their life would be a lot more better since they would be brothers. They would be treating each other way better. Most of them wouldn't be treating each other with such disdain, and they would have a very well, I guess, good relationship with each other. Now, over time, we see that pretty much Deku would come to see that he wanted to know more about his heritage. And over time, he would go to his pod the first time in years, and his family wouldn't even look in the pod. Soon, he would look into the pod, and he would basically open the pod. Pretty much, this being about near the end of pretty much was it the first year or near the end of the last day of pretty much the school day or the school year before the 10-month art training, about a day before the 10-month art training. Basically, that night, Deku would be a little bit more interested in his family heritage after they would talk a little bit on the way back to their houses by Tigro and pretty much Deku. Now, basically, Deku would have gone to look into his pod and basically would have found some sort of handle. Basically, the Thundercat's blade. Now, basically, it would be the version of it that will be collapsible. Basically, him looking at the dagger. As he would look at it, he would basically look at it more closely. Over time, he would grab it. Basically, him swishing it around and just playing with it. Eventually, he would have dropped it, him picking it back up, and basically looking at the crystal, trying to figure out if it broke or not. Him being kind of, not wanting to break anything that he may have belonged to his real family. Because he would have been told, he would been told that he was adopted. Basically, as he would look at the blade, he would accidentally put his face right next to the crystal, putting his eyes right near the blade's handles, or right near the blade's handle, right where these parts are, and basically it would activate the Sword of Omens. And Deku would be shown a vision similar to his old life, a vision to see everything and everything that will come. Him seeing a huge vision of pretty much the USJ attack, the forest training trike, the forest training arc, and a bunch of other stuff. And basically him seeing the future it holds, his future holds. Seeing everyone in the center of it, him eventually coming across somebody terrifying, looking like a mommy type creature, with some sort of dark magic around it, some sort of pure evil. Now, what would happen? Deku would instantly be snapped out of the illusion, or not illusion, but the vision soon after he will look into the blade. As he would be confused, he would drop the blade, basically running out of the house. And basically, as he would try to clear his head, the Sword of Omens, when it was activated and when the sword extended, basically it set off some sort of heat signature or some sort of magic signature, basically alerting the mutants that destroyed Planet Caldera or destroyed Third Earth. Basically it's awakening multiple different things on Earth and also on the solar system. It basically awakening, well, Mamara would awaken from his slumber. Basically, him sensing the blade or sensing the power of, well, the Sword of Omens. Now, basically, over that time, we'll also see that Bakugo would have looked at his pot as well. Him seeing a whip and also some sort of blaster gun, and seeing a book, a gold book. As he would look into the book, he would be shot with a bright beam of light, him being shown some sort of answer to an impossible question. Him grabbing the book and shutting it closed. As he would put the book in pretty much a case and shove it under his back and shove it under his bed, basically trying to keep it safe and not wanting to touch it again. Him being kind of confused by the question or the answer he was shown. pretty much him being told that the key is always in the deepest of places. Basically, that will eventually come into fruition later on in the what if. But basically, what happened is pretty much Deku would have gone back up into the attic and basically would have looked more into the pod that he was sent here. As he would look, he would see the Book of Omens. Or was it not the Book of Omens? He would see the Sword of Omens and also some sort of gauntlet. The Golden Shield. Basically, Deku will see this golden gauntlet thing and basically started to wave it around. He pinned it on, basically him looking at it and clenching his fist left and right with it. Eventually, he would start to grab all the book. He would start to grab the Sword of Omens, the Golden Shield, and basically he would put it in a duffel bag. As he took the duffel bag down to Daku Beach to train with it, basically him wanting to figure out how this thing works, since it is probably his birthright, since it was with him when he came to Earth, or when he, landed on planet Earth. And basically, as he would go to pretty much, planet Earth, he would go to Dagu Beach. You see that pretty much Deku would have came across, Tigro, as Tigro would also be on the way to Dagu Beach. As they would go to Dagu Beach, Tigro or Bakugo would have been on a pretty much Bakugo would have been on pretty much a piece of junk or scrap on Dagu Beach. Him looking at the book, him being distraught on opening the book or closing it or just keeping it shut, or maybe even just throwing it away. But as it would be at Dagu Beach, pretty much just, training themselves, Deku would have been more worried about how the sword would work. As he would grab the sword, he would basically tell or ask pretty much Bakugo to, see what the book has. So Bakugo would warn him about the book's bright light and how it's very hard to read at some points. Pretty much Deku would just open the book and start to read in the pages. Him eventually seeing a book title Sword of Omens, him assuming that it was the sword he had, and basically looking at it, saying that the secret words to unlock the power. And basically, he would look at the words, basically it being the same, pretty much, words to make the sword longer and also, give it the power, basically by the Thundercats, roar. As he would grab the sword and give the book right back to Bakugo, as he would grab the sword and he would start to swing it around, saying Thundercats. The audio is kind of trash, but basically, Deku would have summoned the Blade of Omens. Basically, what would happen is he would unlock the powers of the Sword of Omens and also put the Gauntlet on as well. Him grabbing the Sword of Omens and waving it around, basically saying that the sword's weight is very much like butter in his hands, or like a stick in his hands. Very light, but makes you feel strong and powerful. Basically, what happened is pretty much, Deku would have started to train with it, just swing around, and basically, eventually, he would start to swing around with it, stab a couple pieces of scrap, and also start to stab or cut some broken down refrigerators that were in Dago Beach. Basically, him seeing that the blade was very powerful. It cutting through a lot of different and very, rough materials. Cutting through it again and again and again. Eventually, pretty much the Sword of Omens, pretty much would have the same type of role as it was in the pretty much TV show. And basically, the Sword of Omens would have had a lot of power in it. Basically, me giving a little bit extra abilities, but basically, on his base abilities, let's go over the powers of the Sword of Omens. The Sword of Omens has one particular power that is kind of like Mjolnir. It goes back to the user or the wielder of the pretty much Sword of Omens. So if Deku was ever, if he was ever unarmed from it, or pretty much separated from it, he can also just summon it to his hand, even through a black hole. Basically, in one of the episodes on the TV show, the sword fell into a black hole, and pretty much or got sucked into a black hole, and Deku was able to summon the Sword of Omens right back to his hand, just like that. Also, him being able to summon it miles, years, or even centuries away from him. Basically, him summoning it summoning it away from him, or summoning it towards him, away from any type of danger it was in. Like it was somebody, if it was some, if it was in somebody else's hands, Deku can just grab it or summon it back to his. Basically, we see that Deku, when it started to train over the 10 months, him trying to figure out how to use the sword perfectly, him going to different, pretty much, what was it, training places, and also him coming to his father. And in this universe, Sasuke would have actually been a pretty good sword wielder, aka a very good wielder to a katana, but he would give Deku some pointers. Deku would eventually use this on the Sword of Omens, basically him training with it and becoming pretty well trained with the Sword of Omens, him becoming well pretty well trained with sword fighting with the Sword of Omens. Him also being able to unlock that sight beyond sight ability that he had in the pretty much TV show. Him looking at the sword and looking through his hilt. Basically, what happened is he would see a vision. Him seeing death, destruction, and pain and violence in his path as he goes up against Mimra later on in the future, as Deku would be snapped out of this illusion, aka the vision. Pretty much we see that pretty much Deku would just snap out of it, him throwing away the memory of that vision, trying to at least. And basically what happened is pretty much, Deku would have gone on to pretty much just train with the sword more and more over the 10 months, and basically what would happen is pretty much Tigro would have started to, or Bakugo would have started to read into the book more and more, trying to get more visions or try to get more answers to questions of his, family and the history of Caldera and also the history of, Third Earth. As he would look on this in the book, he would see and he would tell Deku about their history, about the Thundercats, Minra, and everything that happens in the Thundercat history. Basically, what would be happening is pretty much this canon. Deku's father would have been this universe's Lion-O, but since it's a story, Deku's gonna be like the next Lion-O. You could put it simple. Basically, what happened is pretty much Deku and Bakugo would start to train more and more. Bakugo trained with the whip. Basically, what happened is pretty much Tigra, yeah, I got his name right. Tigra or Bakugo would start to train with the whip and also the blaster. Him pretty much training with the whip and him being better, getting better and better with it over time. Eventually, them becoming semi masters of both of the weapons. Him also training with the blaster as well. Bakugo trained with the blaster, plus his already existing quirk that he got from pretty much from his time on Earth. Other than Deku, Deku had just trained with the Sword of Omens and also the Golden Shield. Basically, I'm also training in fighting combat and training and sparring with his brother then and there. Now, basically, over time, they would become very skilled with the two weapons, and eventually, they would go to the quirk assessments. As they would talk about Mom Ra and the future, or pretty much the visions Deku's been having, Deku just says that it was nothing, and it's probably some sort of memories or something. It was nothing. Basically, him saying that that monster would never come into fruition, and it's probably never going to happen. So just forget about it. Basically, them getting to, the quirk assessments or the entry exams, and then walking in there. They would have came there a little bit early so they wouldn't bump into Ochaku as they would go to the. Now, doing this, the entry exams, they would go into the entry exams and they would basically just sit quiet as they would be told about pretty much, what will happen, doing everything that's happening, doing pretty much, the entry exams and doing the 0-pointer, 2-pointers, and a bunch of other stuff, and 1-pointers. As that would happen, we'll pretty much see that they would go on and they would be told to go now. As they would do this, they would sprint off past everybody. Basically, Deku being left behind, but Deku quickly alongside Tigra, pretty much passing all of them very quickly. As they would come across a 1-pointer, Deku would easily slice through it, basically for Bakugo and Deku. they would basically, or Deku, pretty much he would sign or he would pretty much make papers for pretty much the Sword of Omens to be a support item for him. Basically, him saying that it was a support item for his quirk. Now, basically, also, Bakugo, he would not showing up with the whip or the blaster, and him just using his, his semi-explosion quirk plus his already existing Thundercat abilities since he's an alien. Now, basically, what happened is pretty much Bakugo would have slain through the pretty much was it zero pointers very quickly. Him using explosion grenade attacks towards pretty much the zero pointers. I mean, was it the 1 pointers? As the 2 pointers and 1 pointers would have been obliterated by Bakugo and Deku. Eventually, as both of them would come across the zero pointer, they would both run off, sprint off, and Deku would have heard pretty much Ochaku under some rubble. As he would sprint over to Ochaku, he would kick pretty much some rubble off of her and start to drag her out of the rubble. As the zero pointer was about to step on both of them, Bakugo would have used most of all of his strength to throw an explosion towards the zero pointer's foot. The zero pointer would have been stunned for a second, but would still, slam his feet down on top of them. But Deku would have been able to slice right through the zero pointer's feet with the Sword of Omens. Him basically putting the Sword of Omens away, pretty much making it go into a dagger shape and pinning it in his gauntlet or in the golden shield. Basically, him grabbing Ochaku and running off. Basically, telling Tigra or Bakugo to sprint off. Now, Deku would have seen Tigra sprint off, and basically, as they would eventually come, or eventually come across each other, pretty much they would have been told that the zero pointer robot was taken out by somebody else. And also that pretty much the quirk assessments or the entry exams were over. They would have all been told to go back home, and basically what would happen, they would all make their ways back home. As this would happen, we would see that pretty much Deku was about to go to sleep that night, as Tigra would have been up all night reading the first paragraph of the of the Book of Omens. Basically, him looking at it very deep in stature, him just learning about all the history of pretty much Thundercats. Eventually, he would have gone to sleep that night, and the next night they would have been woken up for the first day of UA. As they would go to UA, pretty much we would see that Deku and Bakugo would have made themselves in class 1A, then coming across a couple other students. As he would sit down, we would see that pretty much Deku would have pretty much started to train himself. Or not train himself, but would have started to fiddle with pretty much the golden glove. Basically him looking at it in his backpack. Basically just, looking at the gold and pretty much the crystal or pretty much the gem, since the dagger or the sword would have been collapsed into the golden gauntlet. As he would look at it, he would be interrupted by Aizawa. Aizawa told the class to get up and to go down to the gym, get ready, and then pretty much start doing training. As it would happen, we would see that they would basically get to pretty much the outside area, or pretty much the training was happening, and they would all been told to go up and throw the ball. When Deku's turn came, Deku would grab the ball and he would chuck as hard as he could, him getting a pretty good score. Now pretty much Tigra would have grabbed it and he would have made a pretty good score, basically him making the same score Bakugo would have made in canon, but about 2 feet wider. And also Deku would make the same score that he made in canon, but about 2 feet lower. Now basically what would happen doing this, they would basically do the long jump, both Bakugo and Deku getting a very good score. The race, both of them would have made a tie, and basically for the grip test strength, they would have both made a tie as well. Or Deku would have made a little bit higher, so Bakugo would have been a little bit weaker in grip test or grip strength, because Deku would have been mainly focusing on his grip strength, so he could not, he cannot lose the blade in combat. Basically, what happened after that, they would all been sent home with pretty much the syllabus, and after that, they would all been told to go back home. As it would happen, we would say that Deku and Bakugo would have gone back home, basically making themselves, just talking to each other. Now, basically, their relationship, I didn't go in detail about this earlier, but their relationship is basically kind of like a rivalry. Basically, they would be more kind of a competition type thing. Now, basically, what happened is doing this. Pretty much what would happen is, well, they will make themselves back. They'll get themselves on a bus back on the way home, and basically, or back to the way their houses, and eventually, when Deku would get off to get to his house, like by the Bakugo telling him, "I'll see you later tomorrow," basically, he would go to his house with a sword of omens in his backpack, and basically him making himself down, the road, basically going to his house. As he would come across some sort of shadow in an alleyway near him, he'll look closer into it, trying to figure out what it was, and being kind of interested or kind of, well, curious. He'll look at it more and more, and basically he will see red eyes come from the shadows. As he would be kind of, shot by fear, he would back up, basically taking a blade out of his backpack and yelling the Thundercats roar, and basically Thundercats, ho! Basically making the sword longer and pretty much activating the sword. As you look at the shadows, some sort of mommy-like raps would have came out of the shadows and looking at Deku, telling him to give over the sword boy, and no one would get hurt. Deku would have clenched the sword tighter, saying, "I don't think so." Him charging towards the shadow or towards the alleyway, since he would be on the other side of the road, and you would see the alleyway on the other side of the road. He would run to the road, basically him being stopped by a car, and the car would have told him to, don't be in the road, kid. Pretty much telling him to go on. As Deku would make his attention more into the shadows, he would look into the shadows and he would see that Mamra, or the creature, was gone. As he would pick the sword up and basically just walk back home, or more or less jog back home, he would get back into his house, him putting the sword of omens in his closet, just keeping it safe, but in his backpack, and basically him going to sleep that night, being kind of tired. Now I'm gonna leave it off here, guys. The video was kind of bad, in my opinion. I feel like I stuttered too much, and I mispronounced most of the words. Now, basically, pretty much, guys, part 2 will be a lot more better, and I am gonna put a lot more effort in part 2 since this was all freestyled, and I barely made a script for this. Pretty much, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, share, turn on that bell, because most people don't get my new video updates. But basically, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. As always, guys, have a blessed day.